such a big star to me. You're everything I
And can you
wanna
please
be.
give a nice welcome to the Chair, Adrian Roper.
Hello. Are you all having a good time so far? Yes! Great stuff. Okay. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome our director, Jim Crowe, up here to shine a spotlight on Learning Disability Wales's achievements. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As Adrian said, we have got certain priorities today, not least of which, after having had a busy and productive morning, and with you in workshops for the morning, have an opportunity now to lunch and to network and to meet people. So we will try not to detain you for too long. But it is important when we gather together. It's a rare opportunity to come together in such numbers. It's very important that as members and supporters and friends of Learning Disability Wales, that you know something about what we're doing and how we're spending the year and how we've used the resources that we gain from the Welsh Government and from other sources. Our mission as an organisation is relatively simple to say, not nearly so easy to secure. And really it needs the active assistance, support and activities of you to actually ensure that that mission happens. We can help, and we certainly will try to do that as we did last year. Our mission is to create a Wales that values and includes every child, young person and adult with a learning disability in Wales. So, what do I think have been our achievements during the year? Well, there are copies of our annual report available, which goes into a lot of detail about all our activities during the year, but I am going to be selective and pick out 8 key areas that I think are important to report on to you this morning. First is the handbook, the Clear and Easy handbook that we produced in partnership with a number of key organisations in the learning disability field. This is a step-by-step guide to creating easy read materials that will assist people with learning disabilities to participate in gaining information and using that information. It also includes a first, which is a step-by-step guide to creating Welsh language easy read materials. We did that with key translators drawn from across Wales, and it is the authoritative first and unique guide to undertaking easy read in the Welsh language. With funding from the Welsh Government, the handbook has been widely circulated across Wales. I don't think many of us in the room are not aware about Winterbourne View, the so-called hospital in Gloucestershire, where people with learning disabilities suffered terrible abuse, and where several staff are now in jail or facing criminal proceedings as a result of the abuse that they brought upon the residents of that accommodation. In common with an alliance of organisations and stakeholders under the umbrella of No Winterbourne in Wales, we met with the Deputy Minister to express our concerns, and activities have been taking place with key professionals and with Welsh Government officials to try and ensure that the sort of abuse that was suffered in Winterbourne, at least the risk of it, is minimised in the coming months and years within Wales. Abuse can happen in any setting. It doesn't have to be behind a fence or in a big institution, but there are steps that you can take to try and minimise the risk of abuse. Winterbourne View was a place where people from across England and 3 people from Wales had to live. There are several hundred people from Wales who live outside of Wales, and I think it's very clear that for most of those individuals, they really ought to be enjoying a life much closer to home. And part of the work with the Welsh Government has been about trying to secure that opportunity so that most of those people have the choice to come back to live closer to their relatives, their friends and their local communities. That work is only still underway, but it's important work. The Welsh Government about a year ago launched a document called the Framework for Independent Living. That has been produced as a result of pressure from disability organisations led by Disability Wales. That framework suggests and sets out the key elements for ensuring that disabled people enjoy an independent life. And we ensured that within that framework there was importance given and reference made to using person-centred technology to benefit people with a learning disability and ensure that they have more opportunities to be empowered and to be more independent. So we will see how the Framework for Independent Living develops in coming years, but it certainly commits the Welsh Government to taking steps to empower and encourage the independence of all disabled people. About 11 months ago, we held a conference called Families Matter for parents with a learning disability from across Wales. We gathered together with the parents and with some of their children in Llandrindod to discuss the concerns that they have, to discuss the way in which they are supported, or in some cases, the challenges that they face in retaining their child or caring for their child. And that was a very powerful event which spoke very loudly about the needs that exist amongst parents with a learning disability. So I'm really pleased to say that as a result of pressure from Learning Disability Wales, other groups, People First groups, other organisations, Welsh Government has now decided to commission guidance on supporting parents with a learning disability. That guidance will be produced and will be circulated to local authorities and to health boards. So I think that that's a big step forward. We've spent a lot of time and effort developing and creating a new website. I've talked about the transformation already in the lives of most people with a learning disability in the last few years, and our parents who are here this morning also referred to the rapid changes. There have also, as we all know, been rapid changes in technology and in the way that we communicate. We've invested a lot of time and effort into making our new website fully bilingual in English and in Welsh, and also so that it becomes an interactive way of communicating between you as members and supporters and us in Learning Disability Wales, and vice versa, so that we can work together more closely. Practically all of our bookings for training and events now come online through that website. And we're getting many, many hits and many, many visitors. Alongside that, we've been developing our social media work. We've got now a Facebook account, we've got a Twitter account, and I was just checking on the stats, and I think for Twitter, for the Learning Disability Wales account, we have over 2,500 followers. So they're picking up on all the tweets that Learning Disability Wales sends out, and we've sent out over 3,000 tweets since we opened the account. So that tells you the power of some of the new social media that are available for us to utilise and for you to utilise as well, because you can give us information extremely quickly, which we can then use to the benefit of the learning disability community. Even me, if you really got time on your hands, you can follow my Twitter account, Crowe _Jim. I now have 78 followers, so there you are. So if you don't mind hearing the odd story about Irish rugby or references to that, then that's good.
You've got 79 now.
Thank you. So with the assistance of people like Kai in our team and Amy Barrett, who is a very good tweeter, I'm learning, but I still have a lot to learn about how to tweet properly. I know many of you will have had contact with this project. It was working across 9 local authority areas with 9 special schools. We had a particular role within that project, helping young people age 14 plus to have more experiences, have the opportunity to test themselves out, to develop as humans and as individuals. We trained and assisted over 1,000 young people to do more in their lives. And I'm really happy to say that I actually had got a tweet a few minutes ago to say that the Welsh Government funders are now looking to renew the Real Opportunities project. So I think that's extremely good news for the young people in those special schools who will now have greater opportunities to excel in life and to shine. My Rights, My Voice was a project that we did in partnership with partners from, I think it was 7 other European countries, but there are full details in the report. It enabled us to train 12 people with learning disabilities to be trainers on the UN Convention on the Rights of Disabled Persons. And those people hopefully will be able to use that skills and that knowledge now and use it with service providers, use it with professionals, and to ram home the message that disabled people have rights and should be treated as full citizens. So, just 1 or 2 words about looking ahead. There are many challenges. I think for all of us, we want to avoid doom and gloom. We want to celebrate success. We want to encourage people to shine. But there's no doubt there are challenges. Additional learning needs and transition to adulthood for people with a learning disability. The Welsh Government will be bringing forward important legislation this year about how young people, children and young people with disabilities are supported in schools and beyond. It's very important that you and we within Learning Disability Wales influence that legislation, influence how that legislation is turned into practice to support children and young people with a learning disability. We know that these are challenging times. The welfare reform programme of the UK government marches on. We know some of the consequences of that in terms of what's called the bedroom tax and the way it has been borne disproportionately by disabled people. We know about some of the challenges by the new benefits like personal independence payments, and the backlogs and the gaps that are appearing when people just don't know what the future of their benefit position is. As an organisation, we're going to be trying to monitor that, to highlight it. We've also got local authorities making very substantial cuts in their expenditure. That does pose a threat to people with a learning disability and their parents and carers. A couple of people have said to me that there are perhaps opportunities within those changes, and that's what we really need to hold on to. But we need to fight to ensure that those opportunities for people with a learning disability are not restricted, that they actually grow. So we'll be trying to do our best to be a channel for communication on those issues and to be a voice for the sector. Youth employment. The Welsh Government has control over a number of youth employment programmes. We held an important conference back in June called What Works Wales, and it was very clear from that discussion where people with learning disabilities, experts in this area, came together and discussed this matter. It was very clear that there are discriminatory practices within some of the Welsh Government programmes, and there is more that the Welsh Government could do to stimulate employment opportunities for people with a learning disability. We'll be working with other stakeholders and interest groups to try and pursue those matters with Welsh Government over the coming year. This has been on our agenda for a couple of years, it has to be said. Where services are provided to people with a learning disability, they are commissioned in the first instance. A local authority will decide what services need to be provided for individuals. Some of that practice, we would say, is destructive and is no good either for the person with a learning disability, their parents and carers, or for the provider organisations who are trying to do a good job in very difficult circumstances. So we will continue to try and influence the way in which services are being commissioned and to get away from an emphasis on the price of everything and the quality of nothing. So those are our challenges for the coming months. Thank you very much.